Welcome back. All right, I want to talk about goaltending. So there was a conversation being had. I know it was either TNT or ESPN, and they were talking about goaltending and the lack of elite goaltenders, and how a lot of teams are struggling to find that true starter. And the question of, are there fewer when it comes to those elite, great starting goaltenders than there used to be? Now, my answer to that would be I don't think so. I think what we're seeing right now is part and parcel of the fact scoring is up. I think when scoring is low league wide, I think it kind of hides some of the goaltender's shortcomings. I know during the dead puck era of the late 90s, early 2000s, you might have a goaltender puts up great regular season numbers, and then in the postseason, not so much. So I think in the era we're in now, where there's a lot of really good, highly skilled players putting up a lot of points, I think it makes it look like goaltenders are worse than what they were, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. But I wanted to look at this, and I wanted to add some historical perspective. So, the most times that a goaltender's been top three in the save percentage area of the National Hockey League, Glenn Hall leads the way with 11. Now, Glenn Hall obviously played during the original six era. That's why I didn't include the list of top tens. So, goaltenders who are top 10 in save percentage the most often. I thought that in an original six era, it's a little too easy. Johnny Bower, 10 times. Bauer and Hall seen as two of the greatest goalies of all time, both Hall of Famers, and so is Dominik Hasek as we get to a modern era goaltender, a more modern era, I should say. 8 times he's there, and Jacques Plante, 8 times he was top 3 in save percentage league-wide as well. Patrick Roy, right here, 7 times. Patrick Roy, a big part of the reason why goaltending got better in the 80s, and we'll talk about it. Gump Worsley, Tony Esposito, and Ken Dryden, all 6 times they were top 3 in league-wide save percentage. In terms of Ken Dryden, that's really notable. That's not original 6 era, but he had a short career, and the fact he was top 3 in save percentage 6 times, that's insane. And look at how many of these goaltenders are Montreal goalies. Bernie Parent 5 times, and then Glenn Chico Resch 4 times that he was top 3 in save percentage, and then the Islanders rewarded him by sending him to the Colorado Rockies, where his numbers could not be that good, and then he was in New Jersey, where at the time, there's no way a goaltender could have a save percentage that was really good in New Jersey playing for the Devils. So that was too bad with Glenn Resch, but anyways, and I'm pretty sure I've already done video on Chico Resch as well, career-wise. Now, when we get into the all-time wins category, Marty Brodeur leads there, 691 wins. And I don't think anybody threatens that record. I don't think anybody gets there. Patrick Roy's got 551. He's second, not for long. Marc-Andre Fleury will pass him. 548 wins, and he's got more than half a season left in order to get 4 wins and pass Patrick Roy. I don't think I'm talking out of turn to say, yeah, he's going to get there. Roberto Luongo, 489 wins. It's a shame he didn't get to 500. Ed Belfour, 484 wins for Ed Belfour. Henrik Lundqvist, 459. Curtis Joseph, 454, should be in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't he in the Hall? Put him in the Hall of Fame, please. I will stay on this soapbox for as long as I need to. He needs to be in the Hall of Fame. Terry Sawchuk, 445 wins. Jacques Plante, 437 wins. And Tony Esposito rounds out the top 10 at 423 wins. So with current goaltenders, the ones that I went through, and I thought, yeah, maybe they get to that top 10 wins level. Jonathan Quick, could. He has 383 wins, so he'd need 40 more. It's not likely. However, he has played so well with the New York Rangers so far, you could argue he's their best goaltender. You will notice that Shesterkin's not in this part of the board, and I'll talk about it. But yeah, Jonathan Quick, it's possible he has a really good run the rest of the way, and the Rangers go, why don't you stick around for another year or two? And maybe he does threaten to get into that top 10. But does Bobrovsky bump him out before then? Bobrovsky has 373 wins. Playing for Florida, it's an expensive contract, but again, he's a winning goaltender. Andrei Vasilevsky, 268 wins for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vasilevsky, widely seen still as one of the best goaltenders in the league. His pace at which he's putting together the wins has been very impressive. And so if anybody else is going to hit that 500 win mark, I think of the other names down here, I think Vasilevsky has a really good shot at it. Connor Hellebuck may as well. 252 wins. We know he's staying in Winnipeg past the season. He signs the long-term extension. And Winnipeg's a pretty good team. That's part of how you get all those wins. I do have Igor Shesterkin on the board. I still think talent-wise, Shesterkin, one of the best goalies in the league. I think he's elite. He has 109 wins in his career. He's having another kind of up and down year, though. Like, he seems to be getting it together, and then it doesn't work out as well. The good news for him is the Rangers, an elite team, they're playing really, really well, but Shesterkin's numbers are kind of head scratching at this point. But again, you've got a team that's up near or at the top of the league, and the goaltending hasn't necessarily been the story that you expected, but Jonathan Quick's been fantastic, right? Now, getting over to save percentage, and again, I wanted to do this from a historical perspective. So going back to the season I first started watching hockey, 80-81. 876 was the save percentage league-wide. That was the average. And 3.84 goals scored per game per team. So, a lot of goal scoring. In the 80s, that was what it was all about. 85-86, save percentage league-wide was down to 874 goals, 3.97 goals per game. We did not have the defensive formations you see in the NHL now. We didn't have all the video stuff, obviously. Roger Nielsen started the video stuff, and at the time, everybody was like, video? What are you talking? It's crazy, this guy with the video. So, really, the league was completely different then than it is now. 90-91, league save percentage starts coming up. 886 save percentage, 3.46 goals against, or 3.46 goals scored per game per team. But this guy here was a big part of the reason why save percentages started coming up. Patrick Waugh. 85-86 as a kid, basically a kid, 20-year-old. He leads the Montreal Canadiens to a Stanley Cup, and he became the dominant goaltender in the NHL. Suddenly, for French Canadians growing up in Quebec, you want to be Patrick Waugh. That's what you want to be. So Patrick Waugh, I think, was a big part of the reason why we saw so many French Canadian goaltenders in the mid-90s and late 90s and so on and so forth. 95-96, league save percentage is up to 898. Goals per game, 3.14 goals scored per team per game. So goal scoring coming down, save percentage up, which makes sense. But we're going to talk about how those numbers can be not necessarily 100% related to one another. 2000-2001, save percentage is above 900 now. 903, 2.76 goals scored per game per team. 2005-2006, as we come out of a lockout, wiped out season of 04-05, the league deciding to do something about the fact that, well, the game was slow and it was kind of boring to watch. So save percentage drops to 901 the year that they come out of the lockout. Goal scored per game up to 3.08 per team. So it's back up above 3 for the first time in a decade. 2010-2011, save percentage has gone back up, 913. One thing to keep in mind is whenever we go through an era where, the offense is helped, whether it's taking out the red line, you allow two-line passes, or you get the clutching and grabbing out of the game, you start cracking down on all the slashing, and eventually defenses catch up. They figure out a way to nullify that. 2015-2016, save percentage league-wide is up to 915. Goals scored per game down to 2.71 per team. And the NHL realizing we've got a scoring problem. The highlights that everybody wants to see aren't necessarily of a guy being mugged in front of the net when he's just trying to tip a puck in. It's the tip. People want to see these big moments with goals and huge saves and everything. So the crackdown kind of works. 2020, 2021. 908 save percentage league-wide and 2.94 goals scored per game per team. This year so far, save percentage is 904 and goals scored per game 3.14. So going back through this chart, the goal scored per game is the same as it was in 95-96. Save percentage league-wide is better at 904 as opposed to 898. So the idea that goaltending right now is, well, it's not very good. And it feels like there's been some of that idea with some in the media reporting on goalie numbers. I really think it's a matter of just teams are scoring more goals. And so that's going to make a goalie's stats look weaker than what I think they necessarily are. So if we're talking about elite goaltenders, and I rank them by save percentage, the first thing that stands out is I didn't include Ullmark on the board. I could have, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to keep it to these 7 and discuss these 7. First off, Adin Hill. Coming off a Stanley Cup win, he's 10-2-2 this season. 935 save percentage for Adin Hill. Hill has shown he is capable of being a starting goaltender now, and once he comes back from injury, I would think he'll play the lion's share of games for the Vegas Golden Knights from here. And then in the playoffs, he'll get a chance to show, hey, not a one-hit wonder. Jeremy Swayman, 9-1-3, 933 save percentage. So Ullmark couldn't have the same season this year he had last year. There was no chance he was going to have the same numbers he had last year. Just ridiculous. The same as Igor Shesterkin couldn't equal the numbers he had the year before last season. So for Swayman's taken over as the starter right now, although it's still a 1A, 1B situation. It's fluid. and it's not a big deal about who plays in a Boston game. Now in LA, you've got Talbot putting up great numbers, 12-5-2 with the 927 save percentage. The Kings had so many problems with their goaltending all year last year, so the way Talbot's been playing, fantastic. Thatcher Demko in Vancouver, yeah, Canuck fans are pretty excited. 15-7 for Demko, 923 save percentage. I think he's back into that conversation as a top 10 goaltender in the NHL again. And it's great because last year was a down year. He was hurt, and yeah, things got better by the end of the season. Connor Hellebuck, 14-6-1 so far for the Jets, 916 save percentage. They've had some big wins. Connor Hellebuck's usually the goalie of record. When they get those big wins, it's not a coincidence. Elias Sorokin's numbers have come up after a slow start by his standards. He's 8-4-6 on the season with a 914 save percentage. And Varlamov's been excellent as well. So the Islanders have two very good goaltenders right now. UC Saros, 13-10-0 with a 910 save percentage. His numbers got better when Nashville was playing better. It's odd how that works, right? They're tied to one another. Nashville and Saros both started playing better, and all of a sudden they're back above the playoff line and look like a team that should be a wild card this year. So this is the elite, right? And we can have the debate about who else might be here. Blues fans are going to point out Binnington as an example. There will be discussions of whether Varlamov should be here, should Sterkin, all kinds of other goaltenders. I think the idea that we don't have as many good goaltenders as we had is kind of overblown. But one thing to keep in mind is a lot of these goaltenders are American and European. And the number of Canadian goaltenders right now we can look at and say, what an elite goaltender, it's dropped. You know, Carey Price's career is essentially finished. So when you talk about the Olympics in 2026, the conversation about who the starting goaltender might be for the Canadian team at the Olympics makes sense to have that debate and that discussion of what, is going to happen. And I know that Hockey Canada is aware that there's been issues with developing goaltenders in Canada, but it takes a while. It's not like Hockey Canada is going to step in last year to try to, amp up their development of goaltenders, and 2 years later we're going to see a bunch of them in the NHL. It doesn't work that way unless we start bringing like 12, 13, 14-year-olds into the NHL, but I can't see that happening. So I think that's part of it. I think that there's a lot of American and European goaltenders in there when we talk about the best goalies in the league. But then we talk about who might have an extra goalie and who might need one. So the conversation of where goaltenders might be changing and everything. I don't have San Jose on the board. I did discuss with Ted Ramey today about the idea of, Kakin and Blackwood and what they might do at the deadline. There are teams that are going to have those conversations about who you keep or who you don't keep when it comes to the deadline. But I wanted to stick to the right now, right where we're at. Teams that might need a goalie. The rumors are all out there. New Jersey has been, calling around looking for goaltending help. Carolina, I think the way Kochekov's played over the last couple of games might have eased some of the concerns from Carolina. And we know Ronta can be a very good goaltender, so it might just be a bad stretch for him. Obviously, Freddie Anderson's health and where he's at is going to be a conversation, but I don't know if with Kochetkov and Ronta, if there's necessarily going to be a great appetite for making a move that could very well end up meaning giving away a prospect, a draft pick, or a player, right? Teams don't just hand you whoever and ask for nothing in return. It's fine. Just keep them. Just enjoy. That's great. Buffalo. Obviously, Buffalo is supposed to be better than where they're at. Their goaltending has been a question mark. I think Luukkonen's been good lately, but again, the question becomes one of, so do you need to improve it? Now, the one thing with goaltending around the NHL is if you're going to try to improve your net minding fortunes, I don't know if you're going to be able to do that during the season when you're looking at maybe acquiring a starter. So in Buffalo's case, I think like a really true, tried and true starter, which Levi's going to be at some point, I don't know that Buffalo has that yet. Levi's had his stops and starts again. Luukkonen has been good at times. Comrie, really rough recent record for Comrie. But yeah, Buffalo I think could use a goalie. And I've got Seattle on the board. You've got Grubauer week to week. Decord's been very good, but the overall goaltending picture in Seattle, I think it's kind of up in the air a little bit. Just a little bit, not a lot. But I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that. And then there's Edmonton, right? So Skinner had a really good run, but once he had that bad game last night, and I'm saying bad game like Tampa Bay isn't capable of racking up 6 or 7 goals in a night when they're on and they're clicking. But as soon as he has a game where statistically his numbers are poor, immediately that conversation comes up again of, oh, Edmonton needs a goalie. And so all of those wins he had going into last night get kind of forgotten, and so Edmonton ends up on the board as a team that might need a goalie. And I think there's some truth to that. So if you're of the mind that, well, Jack Campbell's not the guy, don't bring him back up, just leave him there. And I've had that debate, and fine. Just, all right, we're just going to leave Jack Campbell in the AHL. He's not the answer. Calvin Pickard, is he the answer as the backup? I'm not sure. And again, I'm a Calvin Pickard fan, but if you want to see Edmonton, win a Stanley Cup and everything, you're going to need a really good 1-2 tandem, and I'm not sure if Pickard's the guy. I think part of the problem with Skinner that leads to a game like last night is maybe he's being overplayed a little bit at the NHL level right now. But yeah, so that's a whole debate that we can have, and I'm not having it right now with myself, or I guess with the Cats. Anyways, and then there's teams with extra goalies. Philadelphia has a plethora of goaltenders that might be an upgrade for a team, or at the very least insurance. They pick up Cal Peterson's contract, so Erson's been good. Sandstrom's obviously there. Sandstrom's already cleared waivers, I think, twice this season. And Carter Hart. And so there's a lot of goaltenders there, and this is why there's a question mark there, because I don't want to put extra goalie and not have the question mark there, because it is questionable. Does Philadelphia, before the deadline, decide, you know what, we're going to make a move in net? And if they stay in a playoff spot, that kind of makes it more difficult to make a decision on that. You don't want to be making a move that hurts your team. So that's where the idea of, well, they could always trade Carter Hart kind of goes out the window. Hart's been good this year. You don't want to be trading him if you have a chance at the playoffs. I don't think the fans would be happy. Montreal, you have 3 goaltenders in Montreal. They've been carrying 3 all year. Jake Allen's the obvious one that could become available. It's just a matter of when. Detroit, they got 3 goalies. Alex Lyons starting for them tomorrow. So the question becomes, who's the odd man out? I'm starting to think it's going to be Reimer. They keep playing Husso as much as they are. Husso's numbers have not been great, but his win-loss record's really good. So is Reimer going to be the odd man out? Maybe so. Then you got Calgary. Now, I think Wolf's looked good. I think Wolf's ready. So then the question becomes, do you try to move Vladar or do you try to move Markstrom? I think Vladar's the one that's going to have more market value. I think it makes more sense to make Vladar available and see what kind of offers you get. Vladar's still young enough, too, that he could become a starting goaltender in the National Hockey League. And again, with Markstrom's contract, I don't know how movable that contract is. And then you've got Columbus. With Tarasov coming back from injury, there's been discussion about whether or not Spencer Martin might be tradable. He may have more market value right now than the not market value he had when the Canucks put him on waivers and Columbus picked him up. So it's been nice to see Martin's game, picked up this year and how well he's played for Columbus, considering everything else that's gone wrong with Columbus. So, yeah, once Tarasov's cleared, Martin is expected to be traded, and then it's a matter of where. The rumor was that maybe Edmonton would look at Spencer Martin. I don't know. I don't know how that would go, but we'll see. Maybe Spencer Martin being back in the Pacific, maybe he'd have a really good run this time around. And then the question of John Gibson. John Gibson is obviously the one that's out there, whose name is going to come up anytime the Ducks are struggling, and right now they're struggling really, I was going to say mightily, but that's a little on the nose. So I'll just say tremendously. They've been struggling tremendously lately, and you have to think that for John Gibson, he would welcome a trade, and it's a matter of where. New Jersey is the one that's emerged as the probable contender, although a lot of the time when you look at which teams, are rumored to be picking up a defenseman, a goaltender, or forward, a lot of the time I feel like it's just people in the media going, well, this team clearly has a need. That GM's looking, because we know New Jersey is, so you just put 2 and 2 together and you go, that makes sense. We'll do that. That would make a lot of sense. And then if it happens, great, you called it, and if it doesn't, it's just speculation, right? But Gibson is the one that is out there right now who is seen as a potential elite goaltender, a potential top 10 goaltender in the National Hockey League, available via trade. And there's not a lot else out there when it comes to a top-notch goaltender who a team's willing to give up. One question I've always asked myself, and I'll throw this out there to all you fine people too, with what Adin Hill did this past spring, and with the fact that we've seen other goaltenders come in like Alex Lyon and have really good runs and look pretty darn good. Is this a league right now where almost any goaltender can get hot? Does it drive down the amount of money that a goaltender should be paid if a guy can come in as a third stringer and put up similar numbers? Or do the elite goaltenders warrant that big money and then everybody else just kind of, stays around that 2 million and below number? Like, it'll be interesting to see what happens when the salary cap's ballooning up and see what it does to goaltenders' numbers, how much money they make. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And again, this elite goalies, there's a question mark here too, because I'm just putting those 7 up there as discussion point. But you guys can let me know your thoughts. Are we in an era right now where goaltending is down? My answer to that would be I don't believe so. Ottinger's not on the board. I think Ottinger can be an elite goaltender. We've seen that. I really think it's just that scoring's up, so there's more scrutiny on the goaltenders. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.